With some business groups to discuss topics we've heard a lot about in the headlines lately.
Diana Norman now joins us live in studio for a chat with a congressman. Good morning, Diana.
Well, good morning, Sean and Kristen. Congressman Sean Duffy has a pretty busy day, but he took some time out of his busy schedule to stop by this morning to talk about what he's been up to. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me in, Diana. Appreciate it.
Now, tell us a little bit about the meetings that you're going to be having and the big topics you'll be discussing.
Well, this is a great time in August to travel through and see a lot of small business owners, see a lot of the people that work in those businesses, and then see a lot of different groups that are employing folks in our community to see what issues really matter to them. And a lot of the things I think we're going to hear about is immigration reform and what's going to happen with immigration, what's going to happen with Obamacare, and what's going to happen with the government staying open. Those are a lot of issues that are in the news, and people are concerned about them in central Wisconsin. But specifically, immigration reform. We want to see a system that's actually going to work for the people who come here without documentation, but also work for people in the country. And I don't think you can get a conversation going until we first secure our border, making sure we know who's coming across. And this is not the security that we've talked about for the last 20 years. We actually have to secure our border. And then I think we can work on the 11 million people who have come here without documentation in a fair way. But we're going to have that conversation in the House, but also as I talk to business groups.
And now turning to Obamacare, on CBS News, the president recently said, quote, many members of Congress in both parties are working hard to inform their constituents about these benefits, protections, and affordable plans. But he goes on to say, but there's a group of Republicans in Congress working hard to confuse people and making empty promises that they'll either shut down the health care law or if they don't get their way, they'll shut down the government. Now, I understand you don't want the government to shut down, correct?
No, I don't.
Kind of what's your thought on that?
Well, first of all, I think it's not the way we're talking about Obamacare. Wisconsinites see the fact that their health care premiums are going up. They're not coming down. The president promised that we would have reduced premiums. Premiums have gone up, and these are hardworking families that are having a tough time paying their bills, and they're having higher premiums. That's tough. We've seen, because the way the law is written, there's an incentive to have employees that are at part-time, 30 hours or less. So you've gone from people who are having a tough time or a family member who's lost a job, now going from that full-time job to a part-time job because of this bill. So, I mean, we're feeling the real impacts of Obamacare, and it's not positive. So we're trying to, I mean, I've said I'd repeal and replace, or just straight up repeal if there's not a replacement movement. And the bottom line is, we're going to continue that effort. I think America is on our side right now to have a healthcare system that's going to work, reduce cost, and increase access. But all the while we have this debate, I don't think it's appropriate that we threaten to shut down the government. We'll use whatever tactics we have out there to be successful at this. But to shut the government down, I don't think that's a winner for the American people, and I don't think it's a winner to successfully reform the way Obamacare is working for us.
And I want to switch gears a little bit and talk briefly about the sequester. We haven't heard a lot about it lately, but it is still going on. Kind of where do things stand? Thanks
for bringing that up again. Listen, I mean, this was a really dysfunctional way to cut spending. You see a Congress that's not working very well. People aren't finding agreements. And so this was a hammer that was used to cut spending if an agreement couldn't be reached. And it's reducing spending, but it's having some tough impacts on folks. So as we go into the next budget cycle, we're having a conversation about what do we do with sequester and what numbers are we using to fund the government. Is it sequester numbers or pre-sequester numbers? We're trying to use the sequester numbers to find out how we can fund the government at a little bit lower level, but do it in a more appropriate approach.
All right, and lastly, we've heard a lot about lately is Egypt. There's a lot of violence there. The president has condemned it and canceled a joint exercise with the country. What are your thoughts on Egypt, and what do you think needs to be done? First
of all, I mean, it's incredibly complicated, and I don't get the secure briefings like the president does. But, you know, I don't think there's a lot of good answers. But this is what I think. This is all about energy. It comes back to energy and energy independence. In America, I think this could be a greater sign for us to pursue our own energy resources, look to Canada and Mexico to help us out, and if we have North American energy independence, that makes us less concerned about what's happening in the Middle East, and it sends less of our American dollars over to people who don't like us very much in the Middle East. And not only that, we keep the dollars here for our Wisconsin families and our Wisconsin jobs and our Wisconsin economy and American economy. And so when I hear more about the dysfunction in the Middle East, it says to me more and more it's so important for us to look to our energy sources here in North America. And not only that, it helps drive costs down for us, which also helps our families who are having a tough time heating their houses or putting gas in their car. But not only that, it helps our manufacturing sector to have decreased energy costs, which gives us a competitive advantage. So I see Egypt and I look at American energy independence.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. We're going to send it back to